So in case if I forget to click on that record button, please do remind me, guys, every day. So I'm sure you should be able to see if this session is getting recorded or not. You'll be able to check it from that go to panel, that box, the dialog box of the software. Okay. So let's have a quick recap. It's not much that we have discussed yesterday. So we have discussed about a couple of testings. One is functional testing. And what is the second one, guys? What is the second one? I want to hear from you. I have your chat window open. Okay, wonderful. So we have discussed about non-functional testing. So we discussed about functional testing and non-functional testing. So whatever the requirements that we gather for functional testing, we just call them as requirements. Okay. But specifically, if you want it to be specific, you can call them as functional requirements, but nobody would call that as functional requirements. You just call it as requirements because, typically that's what, it is. Okay. But the requirements that we gather for non-functional testing, what do they? Oh, yeah. Sorry. Let me share the screen. I'm so sorry about that. So I thought I was sharing the screen. So guys, are you able to see my screen, please? Are you able to see my screen? Thank you. Okay, so the requirements that we gather for functional testing, people usually call it as requirements. Okay, so nobody would call it as functional requirements because usually the testing is functional testing. Okay, but the requirements that we gather for non-functional testing, we specifically call them as non-functional requirements or NFRs. So NFRs is a very, very, very popular word when it comes to the performance testing field, guys. So people usually call it as NFRs. They don't call them as non-functional requirements. Very rarely they do, when they really have to specifically mention. But inside the performance testing teams, they have this popular term called NFRs when they talk to each other. So when you go to the interviews as well, it's better you use this term NFRs rather than non-functional requirements. It gives them that kind of impression that, you're a functional tester. So NFRs. So we haven't discussed much about NFRs, but we have defined the term called NFRs. Okay. So then we have discussed why performance testing. Why performance testing? So why performance testing? Why performance testing? In case if the application is slow, your end customers are not happy, and if the end customers are not happy, they are not coming to your website. So it's better we do performance testing to make sure your application is fast. To make sure your application is fast. Wonderful. So this is how far we have discussed yesterday. So we'll get started from there. So first of all, we'll discuss why these applications actually become slow. Okay. So we have discussed that, yesterday, if the applications are slow, the performance is slow. Yeah, which means that the applications are slow, the customers are not happy. So let's discuss as to why in general these applications become slow. Okay. So like our Mark is riding his new motor bicycle. He bought a new motor bicycle. Okay. So he's the only guy sitting on the bike. Okay. And the bike is having a very good, CC or the engine. Okay. So he's the only guy sitting on the bike, and, now there is very less load. I wouldn't say no load, but there is very less load on the bike. So his bike would go very fast. Okay. Or is the bike has the capability to go very fast because there is hardly any load on it. So Mark has a very good friend of his. Okay. So he wants to join as well. So now he's sitting on the bike. So there's two people. Earlier there is only one person sitting on the bike, but now there are two people sitting on the bike. So the load on this bike has increased. Because earlier there was only one person, there is less load, but now there are two people, there is more load. So obviously the performance deteriorates. So in certain countries, people do triples as well. Triples as in 3 people. So yeah, so there's 3 people sitting on the bike. There's 3 people sitting on the bike. So Mark allowed one more person to sit on the bike. Now his his bike, the performance of his bike deteriorates even further. The performance of the bike deteriorates even further. So in general, what we can say is, this is a rule of thumb in life, in general, as the load increases, the performance decreases. Okay. That's what we see in general in lot of things. So yeah, in general, as the performance, as the load increases, the performance deteriorates in general. Okay, that's what happens in most of the things in your life. Okay, so same thing with the applications. Same thing with the applications as well. When I said applications, as I've told you, your Facebook is an application, your LinkedIn is an application, your Gmail is an application, your Yahoo Mail is an application. Those are all web applications. So anything that you can access and you think that it's responsive, okay, and whatever the response that you're getting is a real time, you can call that as an application. So now why applications become slow? Multiple users using the application at the same point of time. Yes, so there are many people using this application at the same point of time. The load on the application increases, just like how the load on the bike increased, the load on the application increases, then the applications become slow. So typically this is what happens with the applications as well. If here in the bike, there are 3 people sitting on the bike at the same point of time, at the same point in time, so the load has increased, so the performance decreased. Same thing with our applications as well. So at the same point of time, like right now in India, let's assume it's 7:10 right now in India. So I'm sure in New York or in the people in US who are in the Eastern Standard Time, it is 9:40 p.m. I believe. So at this 9:40 p.m., let's assume the Gmail application, our Gmail application. So at this 9:40 p.m., okay, Eastern Standard Time, our Gmail, is it used by one person or do you think it is used by multiple people? I want to hear from you guys at this point in time, which is 9:40 p.m. EST or 7:10 a.m. IST. There are only one person using the Gmail application or there are multiple people using it? I'm just wondering. I want an answer from you. This is multiple people who will be using this Gmail application, guys, at any point of time. Okay, the Gmail is not specifically designed for you. Okay, whoever wants at whatever time they can use it. So at this point in time, definitely this Gmail application is being used by multiple people. So now there are multiple people using, okay, so at the same point in time or the same point of time, the load on the application increases, okay, and usually the applications become slow, or there is a chance that the application becomes slow. Okay, if it's not properly designed, there is a chance that the application becomes slow. But in general, this is a rule of thumb. There are multiple people users using the application at the same point of time. The load on the application increases, and there is a chance that the application becomes slow. And typically, that's how the applications become slow. But when you get into the project, I mean, when we see the future topics, we start realizing that sometimes when there is no load as well, if it's not properly designed, the applications can be slow. Okay, but that's a different story. In general, the load increases, the applications become slow. When I said load, what do I mean by load? Multiple people using the application at the same point of time. Okay. Now that we have understood why applications become slow, let's try to understand what is performance testing. What is performance testing? Just give me a moment, guys. Okay. So there you go, guys. So let's try to understand what is performance testing here. Okay. So again, let's consider our Gmail application is our application under test. Okay. As I've told you, at a point in time, there are multiple people who can be using this application. You see over here, there are 4 people using this application, but in real, there could be thousands of people who could be using this Gmail application at a point of time. Okay, that's how popular Gmail is. But for our discussion purposes, there are 4 people using this Gmail application. Okay, so you see, these are all the users using this application at the same point of time. Okay, this is a very, very important term called, very, very important term, guys. So these users who are using my Gmail application at the same point of time, we call them as concurrent users. What do we call them as? Concurrent users. So again, there's a new term that I have coined here. Okay, there are 2 new terms today, NFRs, concurrent users. Okay, so the concurrent users are the users who are using this application at the same point in time. At the same point in time. Okay, so going forward, I'll be using this term very, very frequently. So I hope by now you understand what are concurrent users. The users who are using a particular application at the same point in time. Okay, since these are all the people using the application at the same point in time, this will create the load on the application. This will create the load on the application. Okay, so while the load is being created, performance needs to be checked. So we need to check the performance of this application. We are trying to understand what is performance testing. So while the load is there, we are checking the performance of this application. And so this is what is performance testing, guys. Yeah. I'll come to that point, Phil. Okay, so very good point. Okay, I'll come to that point. Okay, yes. So while the load is being applied, you check for the performance of the application. That's what is performance testing. Okay, so if you're doing a testing with single user, typically we don't call that as performance testing. Okay, performance testing is, the expectation is at least there should be certain load on the application. Certain load means the users who are using the application concurrently. Users who are using the application concurrently, or there are concurrent users, or the users at the same point of time. Okay. So even though in this example there are only a handful of users, there are 4 users. Typically in the real world, there could be hundreds of users using this application. So as a part of performance testing, we have to apply the load of hundreds of users. Like recently I have done a test which is with 1,000 users. Okay, so here, even though I've put 4 users, but typically you could have like 200 or 300 or 1,000 or maybe 1,500 users using the application at the same point of time. While that kind of load is being applied, we have to check the performance of the application. Now, next thing, at this point of time, I don't know if I can ask this question, but certain students ask this question. So this question is, so how do we know with how many users we can apply? Okay, yeah. So as I'm asking the question, so I'm getting a question from one of our dear student. Okay, so this is what is the real number with how many users we actually tested. So can somebody like answer, maybe use the chat window and answer, like, with how many users we can test it? We can handpick them. Oh, it's a Gmail application, let me test it with 1,000. Yeah, it's a Facebook application, let me test it with 2,000. Oh, this is just a simple Yahoo Mail application, let me test it at 100. So we get to decide, or do you think somebody needs to give that number to us? What do you think? Wonderful, Graham. From the NFRs is non-functional requirements. The requirements is given by the client. Client is the person who is supposed to give us with how many users we are supposed to test it. Okay, so we don't randomly decide with how many users we have to test it. This application belongs to client. He has to tell us with how many users we have to test it, and we will go ahead and test it with those many users. We don't decide with how many users. Okay, so typically the number might vary from as low as 100 users to maybe 1,500 users or 2,000 users. Okay, wonderful, Srivalli. It comes from a document called workload modeling. We spent like at least 2 days creating the workload modeling sheet. Okay. Anyways, so at this point of time, we just call it that, this numbers comes from the client from a document called non-functional requirements. Wonderful. Now in this picture, these are real users. You see, these are the real users using this Gmail application. Okay. Okay, so in the earlier picture, all these users were the real users using this application. Now imagine there are 1,000 users. Client said that, oh, there are 1,000 users, there are 1,000 concurrent users using my application. Please go ahead and test with 1,000 users. If there are 4 users, you can call the real users, you can call some real users and have them use the application simultaneously, and while you check the performance of it. So it is possible. Even that is not possible, but you can request 4 of your friends and say that, oh, this is a Gmail application, go ahead and use it. As you're using it, let me check the performance. So somehow you can, get that work done. But let's say if you have 1,000 users, where will you get these 1,000 real users from? That too for just the testing purposes. It's not possible. Okay, it's not possible just for testing. You are engaging 1,000 people. Okay, so it's expensive. It is very, very expensive. Second thing is, it is not possible. Every time you wanted to test, you cannot call 1,000 people. That's not realistically feasible. So that is the reason why. So these guys have came up with a concept called virtual users. That's why these guys came out with a concept called virtual users, popularly called as V users. V stands for virtual. So V users. So what we are doing, we are replacing the real users with the virtual users. We are replacing the real users with the virtual users. So what are these virtual users? These are tool generated users or the machine generated users. These are the tool generated users or the machine generated users. They are not real users, but they just act like real users. If the real user can log into the Gmail application, the virtual user can log into the email application as well. If the real user can compose a mail, the virtual user can compose a mail. The real user can delete the mail, the virtual user can delete the mail. Everything the real user can do, the virtual user can do as well. But the good thing about these virtual users are, they are tool generated users, so they can just listen to you whatever you have to say. You can have them start just like that and you can have them stop just like that. It's all there in your fingertips. You can completely control them. You can stop them, you can start them, you can again start them, stop them. So you can do whatever you wanted with them. Okay, because they are tool generated users or the machine generated users, and they can just about do anything what a real user can do on the application. They can do the same thing on the application. Okay, so this is what is the virtual user. As the name suggests, these are virtual, which means that they are not real. They are not real. Okay. So typically these tools, when I said these tools, okay, any performance testing tool, okay. So by the word, going forward, I'll use the term called PT guys. Okay, the software guys in general, they have this habit of abbreviating every single thing. Non-functional requirements, NFR, virtual users, V users, performance testing, PT. So LoadRunner, LR. Okay, LoadRunner, LR. So in the class as well, I'll use this abbreviated words, because when you get in the projects, people use this, and even in the interviews, you are supposed to use this. That's when people start thinking that you belong to this LoadRunner world or the performance testing world. Okay, so so all these PT tools, what are these? All these PT tools: LoadRunner, Performance Center. Okay, so I'll talk about different tools. Okay, Performance Center, RPT, Rational Performance Tester, Neoload is picking up really good these days. Jmeter, very good these days. Okay. Webload, Silk Performer. Okay. These are all the performance testing tool, guys. Okay, if you're wondering, LoadRunner is the only performance testing tool? No. So there are handful of them. And are these the only ones? No. There are close to 1,000 performance testing tools. One of them, Oracle Application Testing Suite. Okay, if I start speaking about them, there are quite a few of them, hundreds of them. Okay, but these are the popular ones. Okay, so all these performance testing tools, okay, and more, okay, they have the capability to create these virtual users. There is no, at least there is, I haven't heard about a performance testing tool which doesn't have the capability to give the virtual users or the users. Okay, if you are calling a tool as a performance testing tool, the minimum capability that it has is it should be able to create these virtual users. It should be able to create these virtual users. Okay. So every single performance testing tool, including LoadRunner, have this capability to create the virtual users or the users. Okay, so these are the real users. So virtual users are the machine generated users. The virtual users are the machine generated users, but they have the capability to work just like the real users. We talk about this LG machine later, so we don't have the enough background at this point of time to talk about this one. Yeah, all the tools use the same term, virtual users, as per my knowledge. I have used Rational Performance Tester, I've used VSTS, I've used Jmeter. Okay, so Performance Center I've used, StormRunner Load I have used. At least with these tools, we used to call as virtual users, and I've used OATS as well, Oracle Application Testing Suite. So all these tools, they call it as virtual users, and I'm sure other tools also they call it as virtual users, Shilta. So I can't be 100% sure, but I'm pretty. I mean, in a sense, like I'm pretty sure they call it as virtual users. Okay. Majid has a question. Okay, so let me read out that question. So I'm stopping you in between because the question is very interesting. Okay. So let me read this question out for you guys. Others are also looking at the chat window, I believe. So Majid, you're following the class really well. I'm very glad. An example, your GoToMeeting talking has 151 maximum of attendees. If you have more than 151 max, what happens to the performance? Okay. So first thing, Majid. So 151 is max, which means that they don't allow after 151. Okay, so that's the license that I have taken. So even though if there is a 152 user joins, so he will not be able to join. But hypothetically, let me take this question and let's say they will allow you to join. Okay, if they say they allow you to join, the next thing we have to ask is the GoToMeeting people have done the performance testing for more than 151? Okay, let's say there are 200 people joined and all the 200 people have joined in, let's assume. Okay, now GoToMeeting, whoever is the client, which is a GoToMeeting, have they done? Okay, okay, so have they done performance testing for this 200? If they have done, then your tool should be able to handle it. If they haven't, then not. Okay, but since they said maximum 151, I'm sure they would have done performance testing for 151 and it should be working fine. Okay, so Majid, I think I've answered your question. So Agibu, I think Agibu, yeah. Majid is easy for me, so I'm pronouncing that. Okay, but going forward, I'll use Agibu. Okay, Igrim has a question for us. What about threads? What is threads? THRADES. Threads. Oh, that's in Jmeter, right? You're talking about Jmeter?
Yes.
Igrim, can you? Yes. So, so in Jmeter, we use this term called threads, but people still use the virtual users, when you are talking to each other and all that. Okay. So, Igrim, it's a very good question. Yes. When we go to Jmeter and when we are applying the load, we use the word called thread because that's a technical term. Okay, so when we go forward, when we start talking about analyzer Ugrim, there are two things. One is process, one is threads. Even in LoadRunner, we can have these virtual users coming out as a threads. I mean, as you can have one virtual user assigned to one process or a thread. Okay, so that concept is underlying and it's there for every single tool, Ugrim. So even in LoadRunner, if you go to the controller, there are two things. You run the virtual user as a thread or run the virtual user as a process. So that is an internal working of the tool. So Jmeter has exposed that word to outside world, saying that, how many threads. But honestly, I did the Jmeter project as well. So they use the virtual user term actually when they talk to each other. But when you go to the term, when you go to the tool and start applying the load, yes, you say that how many threads you are running with. Okay, so they have exposed that term called thread, but internally pretty much every single tool use that thread for the virtual user. Each virtual user will have at least one single thread. Okay, but Jmeter you see is an open source tool. I wouldn't say it's properly designed, but all the technical terms got exposed in Jmeter. You see, they don't call it as requests, they call it as samplers over there. Okay, so they have kind of exposed all the technical terms as a part of the tool itself. Okay, so yes, you can call them as threads as well. Okay, thank you, Igram, for bringing that point. Okay, but you can call the virtual users as well. Okay, so I was answering Shraddha, the question what she was asked is, so in the other tools as well, can you call it as virtual users? You could actually. Okay, in the Jmeter as well you could, but yeah, when you really go to the tool and when you start applying, they use the term called threads. But do remember, Yagram, that in any tool underlying for a virtual user, there is a thread assigned. Okay, so yes, so in a way what you said is true as well. Yeah. So Shraddha, to wrap it up, okay, in Jmeter you can use the term virtual users when we talk to each other, but on the tool they specifically call it as thread. The users are called as threads. Okay, thanks Ingram for bringing that point out. Yeah, so I almost forgot that. So let's redefine what is performance testing. Let's redefine what is performance testing. In the earlier example, the load was created by the real users. Okay, but ideally in performance testing, we never do the performance testing with the real users. We do the performance testing with the virtual users. Who will give these virtual users? The LoadRunner tool or whatever the tool that you are using will give the virtual users. And now these virtual users will apply the load on the application. So creates the load on the application, and while the load is being created, okay, performance testing needs to be checked. The performance of the application needs to be checked. This is what is performance testing, guys. As simple as that. With the virtual users, you create the load on your application under test. While the application is under load, you check for the performance. This is your performance testing. This is your performance testing. Okay. So Phil, now this is when we got into this users. Okay. So Shraddha has a question for us. Is there any limit? Okay, let me read out the question. Is there any limit with LoadRunner for applying virtual users? Or in other words, what Shraddha is asking us, is there a limit of virtual users for the LoadRunner? So what do you think, guys? What do you think? Yesterday, I think certainly we have discussed about this point in one of the topics. What do you think, guys? Based on the license, as simple as that. For 200 users, for 3 months, they are charging close to $6,000. Okay, imagine what it is. So there is no limit, but you have to purchase, which is very, very expensive. So I would say licensing is the only limit. Okay, so whatever the license that you have purchased for, let's say for my company, for the project that I am currently working, the freelance project, it has the limit of 1,000 users. Okay, which means that over 1,000, I'll not be able to go over 1,000. Okay, but that's the advantage of Jmeter, guys. Jmeter, it's open source. You can have as many users as possible, and there is no limit. When I said there is no limit, there will be a limit in a way, as in when we come to a concept called load injectors or load generators, then hardware will be your limiting factor. But I'll come to that point. When I come to that, I'll take this question again. Okay, so the limit from the tool will not be there for Jmeter for sure, but the limit will be coming from the load injectors with the kind of machine that you're using. But I'll get to that point. When I get to that point, I'll talk about that. But yeah, for the licensing tool like NeoLoad, LoadRunner, Performance Center, Rational Performance Tester, licensing will be the limit. Okay, you cannot go over the license. But open source tools like Jmeter, okay, maybe WebLoad I heard is open source as well. Like this, there are some open source tools. For them, there is no limit. Okay, whatever the client has given you, you can go ahead and apply. Okay, so okay, so let's go ahead and look at this type of users now. So watch carefully the different types of users. Okay, so user base, application user and simultaneous users, and concurrent users. Okay, so there is little bit of confusion between the application users and the concurrent users. Okay, so let me go ahead and explain that. Okay, okay, so there is little bit of confusion, but this is what I understand of the concurrent users and the application users and the user base. So let me go ahead with this explanation now. Okay, so what is the user base? Okay, so let's talk about this Gmail application. If somebody doesn't, if somebody doesn't concur with this, or if somebody doesn't, agree with this, please bring it up. Okay. So there is a lot of confusion around this definition of these three things. So what I've learned in my projects is one way, but what certain people are calling it is in certain way. So let me go ahead with the explanation with what I have learned. Okay. Now we have a Gmail application. Okay, we have a Gmail application and we have this concurrent users. Let's see all these concurrent users. I wouldn't say it's the same transaction, so this is a wrong definition. So let me discard it. Okay, different transactions. Or thing type. Okay. So simultaneous users is same transaction. Okay, so this is what we call it as simultaneous users. Simultaneous users. Okay, sorry over here guys, I'm changing the stuff over here. Okay, so let me explain this. Okay, so let me explain this. So this is what I have learned. Okay, so concurrent users. Okay, so there are concurrent users, there are simultaneous users, and there are user base. Okay, so simultaneous users means they are doing the same transaction. I know at this point of time you don't understand by the term called transaction because I haven't introduced it. Okay, so let me use a term called same functionality. Okay, because some of you don't know what the term called transaction is. Okay, so but to explain this, I need the term called transaction, so I have put it over there. But let's do it this way. Okay, so simultaneous users, okay, are the ones. Okay, simultaneous users are the users who are doing the same functionality. Okay, so for example, what do I say? Like login. Okay, so there are how many people? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 users who are logging in at the same point of time. Okay, so these 8 users are the simultaneous users. These 8 users are the simultaneous users because they are logging into the Gmail at the same application. Okay, not only there are 10 people who are logging out. Okay, those 10 people are the simultaneous users. There are 10 people who are, there are 20 people who are users. Let me use the word users. There are 20 users who are composing the mail. These are simultaneous users. So whoever the users are doing the same functionality, they are simultaneous users, guys. Okay, they are simultaneous users. Okay, now let's see what is concurrent users. Okay, what is concurrent users? Okay, so just give me one moment, guys. So I'm just fixing this slide here. Okay, so let me group it so that we'll not let it be there. Okay, let's group that. Okay, so now let's see what is concurrent users. So now these concurrent users are on the Gmail application. They are on the Gmail application, but they could be doing different things. Okay, some of them could be in login, some of them could be composing, some of them could be deleting, some of them could be logging out, some of them could be doing something called a think time. Think time is they are on the application between the transactions or between the functionalities. I'll talk about the think time little later. Okay, but just at this point of time, just assume that all these users are on the Gmail application. Okay, but they could be doing different things. Okay, some of them are doing compose, some of them are doing deleting, some of them could be doing something else, but they are on the Gmail application. Then we call them as concurrent users. But out of these concurrent users, there are some simultaneous users who are doing a certain transaction at the same, or a certain functionality at the same point in time. Okay, so always remember that the simultaneous users are the subset of the concurrent users, or the subset of the concurrent users. Okay, so finally the user base are all the registered users who have the potential to use the Gmail application. Whoever have registered, they have the potential to use the Gmail application. So all the registered users are the user base, which means that they could be on the application, or they might not be on the application. Okay, you see, some of them are not doing anything. They never logged in. I mean, they are not using this Gmail at all at this point of time. So they are all the registered users. So some of them are working, some of them are not working. I mean, some of them are maybe doing the think time or something like that, or some of them have not logged in at all. So all that together is our registered users. Okay, a user base, which means that they have registered for this Gmail application and they have the capability to use this Gmail application at the same point, at a point of time. At a point of time, this is the user base. Out of this user base, certain users are the virtual concurrent users, which means that they are active on the Gmail applications doing different functionalities or different transactions. Out of these concurrent users, there are certain simultaneous users who are using a certain functionality at the same point in time. They are using a certain functionality at that point in time. So is it clear, guys? Is it clear, guys? Otherwise, I'll go ahead and repeat. Okay. So Phil and Phil and Rupa has responded. So is this your understanding as well, Phil and Rupa? Yeah, thank you. Because this is, and in the internet, when I've studied, I did little bit of research. It's so confusing material over there. Okay, but this is what something which I have done using my projects. Okay, so again I'm repeating. Let's take Gmail application. There are 10 people who are logging in at the same point of time. These are simultaneous users. And at this point of time, which is what, 7:42 India time. Okay, at this point of time, there are 1,000 people who are using the Gmail, but these 1,000 people, they're doing different things on Gmail. Some of them are logging in, some of them are logging out, some of them are composing, some of them are changing the password, some of them are changing the username. Different users are doing different things. So they are all the concurrent users. Okay, always remember simultaneous users is a subset of the concurrent users. But for this Gmail, there are 1 million registered users. So all these 1 million users are the user base. Okay, so there's a user base which is important, concurrent users and simultaneous users. Out of these 3 types of users, the concurrent users is a very, very important term. Okay, so when we do an activity called workload modeling, this comes a very, very handy, and it's a very important term. It's a very important term. Okay, so I hope you have understood this. So if I let me keep it or discard it, but if I keep it, Let me discard it. So let's see what would happen. Yeah, it is still there. Okay, fine. So guys, I'll take a break in 5 minutes. So before taking the break, let's look at what is required for installing this tool called LoadRunner. Okay, so by this time you know that we are here to learn the LoadRunner, obviously. Okay, we are here to learn the LoadRunner. So now, okay, so install the LoadRunner. What do we need? Okay, so a lot of people have called me before registering. I clearly told them what is that you need to install the LoadRunner tool. First things first, the latest version of LoadRunner right now is 12.60. Okay, so is 12.7 out, guys? Anybody know it? Is 12.7 out? Okay, not yet. So the latest version is still 12.60 itself. Okay, that's what I've checked. Yeah, 12.60. Okay, so the latest version of the LoadRunner tool is 12.60. But what we will use for our training is 12.50. Little older version, not much. Okay, there are only few changes. Okay, so they have changed the name from HP to Micro Focus. Okay, by the way, one more thing. Okay, so this is a very, very important thing. Okay, who owns this LoadRunner tool? Okay, who owns this LoadRunner tool? I'll tell you a little bit of history about it. So Mercury is the guy. Mercury is the company which came out with this tool called LoadRunner, or LR. LR means LoadRunner. Okay, I think from 1994 maybe. I don't know the starting year, but all the way till probably 2006 maybe. Okay, so this is owned by Mercury. Okay, so let's not get into the dates because I'm not 100% sure, but at some point till 2006 or 7 or 8, Mercury is the company which owned this company called LoadRunner. Then the HP, a company called HP, okay, has took over. Okay, okay, so the company called HP has acquired Mercury, which means that Mercury LoadRunner became HP LoadRunner. Mercury LoadRunner became HP LoadRunner, and recently 6 months back, a company called Micro Focus. Okay, a company called Micro Focus has acquired this LoadRunner tool from HP. Okay, so this is the history of LoadRunner. Okay, initially we used to call it as Mercury LoadRunner. Then it was acquired by HP. Back in the day, probably 2010 or 2006, somewhere in between that. Okay, so we started calling it as HP LoadRunner. Now recently, 6 months back, okay, it is acquired by Micro Focus. Now we are supposed to call it as Micro Focus. Okay, so Rupa, they have the certifications. You need the certification, let me know. I'll tell you the process. Okay, I figured out the process after a lot of difficulty. You don't even remember how much pain I went through to figure out the certification process for LoadRunner. If anybody is interested to take the certification of LoadRunner, please let me know. So we'll take it offline. Okay. The Micro Focus guys have started it. Yeah. So Micro Focus has taken over. Okay. So this is the history. Okay. So we'll take a break now. So after the break, I'll come back and tell you about how to install, what is that you require and all that, and we'll proceed further. Okay, thank you guys. I'm stopping the recording temporarily. I'm pausing the recording temporarily. Please. So let me see. So when we install this, by default virtual user limit is 50. It's 50. Okay, it's not 200. That's a community edition that it comes with. Okay. So Shraddha, your questions, certain questions, I've already answered in the last class. So we'll take that offline, or after the whole class is done, I'll take those questions. Okay. So yes, and as you proceed, most of your questions will be answered, Shraddha. Just hold on. Okay. I'll answer most of the questions. Just give me a moment. Now, yes. So we are talking about the history of LoadRunner. First, initially it was with Mercury, then HP has bought over, then right now it is with the Micro Focus. Okay, so the latest version is 12.60. Okay, but what we are using for the class is 12.50. So be careful about the versions as well. Okay, so in the interview they might ask about the versions as well. Okay, so what are the LoadRunner version that you have used? So just be careful about the LoadRunner versions as well. If you wanted to know the complete history of LoadRunner versions of all the LoadRunners, okay, so let me see. Okay, wiki. Uh, let's go ahead and quickly look at all the versions of LoadRunner. Okay, the first one is obviously 1, the LoadRunner 1. This is with when it was with Mercury, and it is back in the day in 1993. You see, November 1993 is almost 1994. Okay, then they immediately got out with the next version of 2, and then they took one more year for 3, and every year they came out with a new version. Okay, so this is with HP. Sometime between, like, I think 2006 or 7, it was bought out by HP. Okay, this is when it was Mercury. So this is all when it was with Mercury. Okay, so probably in around this time, I think, 9.0, 9.10, this is when it was bought out by HP. Okay, around this time, 2008 maybe. Okay, you see, rebranded to HP LoadRunner. This is when, 2004. Okay, so 2004 is when the LoadRunner is bought out by HP. Okay, so you can see that 2004. I thought it was 2006, but looks like it's 2004. Okay, then they took a while, 4 years, to come out with a new version. Okay, 9.10, and they came out with the versions as well. And recently it is bought out by Micro Focus. Okay, so recently it is bought out by Micro Focus. Okay, somewhere it should say rebranded again. Okay, so these are all the versions. Okay, so right from 2012, 2014, it's still 12. Okay, so 2014 it is 12, 2015 is 12.02. Okay, 12.02. Then in 2015 they come out with 12.50. So this is what we are using now. Okay, so this is what we are using, 12.50 with a patch 3. Okay, so what we are using is what we have released, what it was released in 2016, 12.50 with a patch 3, which is released in 2016 is what we are using. Okay, 12.53 is also, I've emailed you yesterday. If you wanted, you can use this as well. Okay, so 12.53, and the latest one is 12.60. Okay, so 2004 is when it was bought out by HP, and 2018 is when it is bought out by Micro Focus. Okay, the two. And you have so many versions. You can have a quick look at the versions. Okay, so right from almost 2016, it is 12.50. Okay, so 12.5 version. So 12.5, 12.53, 12.55, 12.56. Okay, 12.57 and 12.60 got recently released few months back. Okay, so this is about the versions. I would advise go through that Wikipedia and go through the versions, so that in the interviews they might ask, so at least you can talk about few versions. Okay, so in the class we'll use 12.50. Now going back, so for this version of 12.50, okay, what is that we need? Okay, so the processor should be dual core or better. Better is always faster. Okay, i3, i5, i7, better the processor, better is the version. Okay, OS, operating system. Okay, obviously you won't have these two, so you would have Windows 7. Okay, with the service pack 1, 32-bit, 64-bit, any of that machine works. The Windows 8.1 with the 64-bit, but that's recommended, and it installs on Windows 10 as well. Some of my students like Melly have successfully installed on Windows 10. Okay, so even though over here it doesn't say Windows 10, but it will get installed on Windows 10 as well, which I've done. So even though you have Windows 10, you can go ahead and use 12.50. Okay, 12.50. If you have issues with 12.50 installing, we'll discuss about those issues tomorrow. So the expectation is today you will go ahead and install it, guys. I've already sent you the files. Okay, I'll show you how to open those files and then do it. But the expectation is today you're gonna go ahead and try it with 12.50. If it doesn't work out, then probably uninstall it completely and then start installing 12.53. Okay, so this is most important. The recommended RAM is 8 GB, guys. Okay, if you have 4 GB as well, it will work, but it will slow down your system. So ideally you should have 8 GB. Okay, Now the browser, whatever the browser, okay, hard disk, typically you have 50 GB hard disk these days, so it should not be an issue. So if you're using 12.53, you're planning to install 12.53. Okay, in the class 12.50 will be used, but if you're planning to install 12.53, there's a minor change between 12.50 and 12.53, but I'm sure you should be able to, acclimatize to that, or adjust to that. Okay, even though you can go ahead and install 12.53. Okay, so again, Windows 7, okay, Service Pack 1, and Windows 8, okay, and it also supports Windows 10. Okay, definitely it supports Windows 10. Officially it supports Windows 10 as well. So if you have Windows 10 machine, I would still advise you to go ahead, give it a shot for 12.50, and if it's not working, then you go ahead and install 12.53. But it doesn't matter honestly, but in the class 12.50 will be used. So if you're installing 12.53, you should be able to adjust to that. As long as you adjust, it should be fine. The processor again, dual core or better, okay, ideally i3, okay. Mac it doesn't support. Sorry Srivalli, it doesn't support. Okay, so as I said, operating system 7, 8 or 10, again 8 GB recommended. Okay, and you can have any browser. Okay, the latest browser of Chrome should be fine, and 50 GB. Okay, this is what 12.53. Okay, it doesn't support Mac, unfortunately. Okay, so once you have installed, you need to make sure that these three components are installed. Virtual user generator or VUGen. The next one is controller. The third one is analysis. You make sure that all these three components are installed on your machine. So how do you make sure? Go to the control, go to the start, and just say controller, and you should be able to see that. Okay, you should be able to see that. And go over here and you say virtual. You should be able to see that virtual user generator. Okay, just click on that. Make sure it is opening well and there are no issues. Okay, make sure you're able to see this home page or the start page. Then you know that you have installed the tool successfully. And the third component is analysis. Okay, you should be able to see that as well. Okay, or simply go to all programs, go to HP software, okay, and you should be able to see all that. Okay, and there is one more check I want you to do. Open the virtual user generator and make sure it is opening properly without any issues. Okay, sometimes it gets installed, but when you open it, it will throw the error, which means that the installation is not clean. Okay, so this is what I want you to do. Now the next thing is, how do I install it, Kumar? Okay, so let me show that. So these are the files that I have sent you. Okay, so these are the files that I have sent you. Okay, so in yesterday's attachment, okay, in the yesterday's email, I have sent this document. Just copy this. There are two links. Okay, I have uploaded this software into this Dropbox. Okay, so that's how I've created this link. Okay. Okay, click on that. Both the links should work. Okay, it is asking me to log in. Okay, I just skipped it. Okay, so even though without registering it is still fine. Okay, you can click anywhere on this button. You see it still says sign on, and you see this is the file. The file cannot be previewed, but that's okay, totally fine. But it can be downloaded. And how much GB is it? Close to 1 GB. Okay, you download it. It's a 1 GB file. It will take a little bit of time to download it. And once you download it, Shraddha, I'll take all the questions. Just you have to wait for a bit. Okay, once you download it, and you can use this link as well. Okay, not only that link, you can use one of these links. Okay, and it's the same story. Okay, so go ahead and click on download, and once the whole download is done, then you will have some files like this. Okay, let me figure out where is that LoadRunner installation file. It should be somewhere over here. Yeah, so you should be able to download something like this. Okay, you should be able to download something like this. Okay, once you have downloaded this, okay, you see this is zipped. Okay, and for unzipping you need a software called WinRAR. Okay, for unzipping you need a software called WinRAR. Okay, so just go to online and you say download WinRAR. Okay, download WinRAR free. Okay, and you download the software. Okay, or it is from WinRAR itself. You can use one of these links. Okay, so go ahead and download this and install this WinRAR. And once you install this WinRAR, automatically, you know, this symbol, you will be able to see this symbol, and you know, you should be able to unzip it. Just double click on this. Okay, and you can just say extract. Okay, extract to whatever the folder you wanted. Okay, so to unzip this, you need a software called WinRAR, which you can download from online. Okay, just say download WinRAR, download it, install the WinRAR software, and once you have installed, automatically my file identifies the WinRAR and you will be able to see this symbol, and then double click on it and then click on this file, and then you will be able to extract it. Okay, so once you have extracted it, so browse to this folder, browse to this DVD folder and double click on the setup. Double click on the setup, you should be able to see this. You should be able to see this. So there are various various links which are available for installing. Okay, I want the LoadRunner full setup. I want the LoadRunner full setup. Go ahead and click on that, and it says yes. Just go ahead and say yes, and it will compute the space requirements. Okay, and you keep clicking next until the software is installed. Okay, so this is what you will do for the installation. So these are the very clear instructions I have given you guys. So you should not have any issues with now. Okay, you have everything you wanted. Okay, so there is one thing I want you to be aware, guys. There is one thing that I want you to be aware. Okay, is what are the challenges that you get or you might get while installing. Okay, first thing, okay, so when prompted, use the typical mode. Okay, I don't want to install because the LoadRunner is already there. Okay, so at some point of time it will ask you. Okay, so it's a typical mode, or there is another option called some other mode. Go ahead and use the typical mode. Okay, that's the first one. Second thing is, okay, there is one more issue that usually faces. It's not then, yeah, here is the thing. Okay, so you need to make sure that the whole thing is completed just like this. Okay, you see, you have a typical mode and custom mode. Okay, so let me zoom in a little bit. You have a typical mode and a custom mode. You have to use the typical mode for the installation. Okay, you have to use the typical mode for the installation. Now the second thing is, this is what it is. Somewhere as you are installing, I think it's the last but one step, it will ask, okay, it will ask choose, where is your certificate file. It will ask that where is your certificate file. Just uncheck this. Okay, just go ahead and uncheck this. Then this will then it will this will go ahead and enable it. Click on next. Okay, you see, please uncheck the marked option. You just have to uncheck it, then this will get enabled and you click on the next. Okay, so even though you uncheck or you don't uncheck it, so it will still be enabled, but now when you say yes, so it will ask you for the certificate file and all that. But you just uncheck it, then it won't ask for the certificate file. So this is a very, very important step, guys. This is where a lot of the students while installing, they just gets hanged up and then they don't know what to do. Okay, so first thing is, while you are installing, it will ask you whether it's a typical mode or a custom mode. Go ahead with the typical mode, and last but one step of the installation, it will ask you which certificate file you wanted. So you just uncheck it and you go ahead and install it. Okay, you go ahead and install it. So these are the only two steps that you have to take care of while you're installing it. Okay, and you're still facing some issues. Tomorrow after the class, I'll stay with you and help you with the installation. Now, the last thing. Sometimes some people will have this issue. Error writing to the file, blah, blah, blah. This issue is faced when you have an antivirus or the firewall on. Okay, you have an antivirus or the firewall on. So I'll show you how to switch off the firewall. Okay, just go to on the start window. Just go and say fire. Okay, firewall. Okay, so you see Windows Firewall. Just click on Windows Firewall and you see this button over here, turn Windows Firewall on or off. Click on that and make sure it is off. Make sure it is off. After the installation is done, you have to switch it back to on because it is good to have the firewall. Okay, there is a reason why your system has a firewall. Okay, only during the installation, switch it off for both the private network and the public network. But once the installation is done, go back and turn it on. But while before the installation, turn it off. Whether you face this issue or not, this is the first step. Okay, go to firewall. Okay, go to firewall. Go to turn firewall on or off and turn it off. Okay, and then that's the first step. Sorry, that's the first step. And the second step is, okay, second step is every system people have the antivirus. Okay, for me I have K7 Total Security. So what I will do is I'll disable the product protection for maybe 1 hour or 5 hours. Okay, and just say yes. Okay, what is the first step? What is the first step? Okay, so switch off the Windows Firewall. Okay, switch off the Windows Firewall. Just say firewall, go to Windows and you should be able to switch it off from here. Okay. Sorry guys, I'm taking this class time, but you need these instructions. Okay. So I'll be sending this updated document to you. Okay. So once you have switched off the firewall, then okay, I'll take that screenshot as well. Okay, so you need to use this options. Okay, so the next thing is switch off the antivirus. Okay, then antivirus screenshot could be different because depending on the antivirus, you know, the screenshot changes. Okay, or turn off the antivirus, whichever antivirus you have. I have certain antivirus, you would have a different antivirus. Okay, so turn it off. Okay, and then go ahead with the installation. Okay, so I'll send you this updated document guys after the class. Okay, so these are the steps that you have to do. Again, if you face any issues tomorrow, I'll take care of them. Okay, after the class. So this is how you install the LoadRunner tool. 12.53, the installation steps differ a little bit, but I'm sure with the installation, steps that I've given, you know, you should be able to figure out if you are planning to install 12.53. So I want you to try 12.50 first, but if it's not working out, then go ahead and do the 12.53. So Melly, which one you have installed, 12.53 or 12.50? Can you please let me know? Okay, so Shraddha has some questions. Okay, so let me see. Sir, initially when we install, this is default virtual user 200, right? No. So whatever the software that I'm giving, that's a community version. Okay, which means that you can play around. This version they have created so that you can learn and all that. Okay, so it's officially, you can download, you install, and how long you have it, this is for the lifetime. Okay, with how many users? 50 virtual users. Okay, so it's a lifetime. Don't worry about the tool getting expired, the licensing of the tool getting expired and all that. Okay, and it is with the 50 virtual users. I hope I have answered that question, Shraddha. The next one is, so I've installed 12.55, so it's totally fine, no issues. Okay, so you go ahead and let it be there. Don't uninstall and install this new one. There will be a little bit of changes, but I'm sure you should be able to accustom. So Melly has confirmed that she has installed 12.50 on Windows 10. Okay, so I'm sure you should be able to do it as well, but definitely the firewall needs to be off, otherwise you will definitely face the issues, and the antivirus should be turned off as well. So these are very, very important, otherwise you will get into issues, or you might get into issues. Okay, so I hope I gave you all the clear instructions. Okay, so I'll as I'm writing, I'll save this class notes as well, and I'll send it to you. Okay, so once the installation is done, that's what you check for: the virtual user generator, the controller, and analysis. Okay, so I'm not sure if we have enough time for us to start this new topic called software architecture, because it's almost 8. We are just into 10 minutes. Okay, but we'll see what we can cover in this 10 minutes. Let's see what we can cover. Okay, now we'll get into the software architecture, guys. Software architecture. Okay, now, okay, what is software architecture? Okay, so let's say, okay, at least in India, this is a dream for everybody to have their own house. Okay, so this is the dream which is shared by a lot of people living in India. Okay, to have a own house for themselves. I'm sure in other countries also it's the same story. Okay, so when you wanted to build a house for yourself, okay, so let's say you have decided to build a house today. Okay, you don't start bringing the bricks and building the house from today itself. Okay, so let's say you wanted to plan to build a house. Okay, you don't start bringing the bricks from the day one and start building the house, or bricks or whatever you use. Okay, so maybe you know what do you say, the wood. Okay, so in certain countries you use the wood and all that. So you don't start bringing it and start building the house from day one. So there is a proper process for that. The first thing is you get the architecture done for your house. You get the architecture done from your house. You go to the architect and you give your plan saying that this is how big the house is, or this is how big you want the house to be. Okay, and then this is where you want the kitchen to be, this is where you want your living room to be, this is how many bedrooms you want, and you come out with a plan and you give the plan to you give the plan to an architect, and he comes out with a proper plan. He will sketch it out for you, he will put that in the drawing, and once you like it, then the actual construction starts. So there are multiple steps before you start building the house. Okay, there are multiple steps before you start building the house. First is you yourself you discuss with your wife or girlfriend, and then you come out with a plan as to how many rooms you want, how you want it to be, and all that. And then you go to an architect, and then you give them your requirement to them, and based on your requirement and how big your land is, he comes out with a plan and he will sketch it for you. You put it in the sketch, or you put it in the form of a sketch, and then he will give the drawing or the sketch to you. And now if you like it, then the next process will start, which is applying for the loan and all that, and then the actual construction of the house will start. So similarly, when you want to build a software, okay, let's say you wanted to build a software to sell your art. Okay, you have an art, you create some nice artwork, and you wanted to create a website so that you wanted to sell your art. Okay, so now from the day one itself, you don't start building the website. Okay, there is a process for that. As a part of the process, the very first thing that you do is you come out with the software architecture for your application. Okay, your web application for which you wanted to build to sell your art. Okay, you come out with the architecture for that. That's the first step. Just like, you wanted to build a house, day one you don't start building the house with the bricks. There is a process. Okay, similarly, you wanted to build a website or a web application, okay, maybe for selling the art or maybe for selling something else. Okay, on the day one itself you don't start writing the code. Okay, or from the day one itself you don't start developing that particular application. Okay, there is a process for that. The very first step, okay, is the requirement gathering. We'll talk about that later. And then you come out with something called an architecture, a software architecture. Okay, so one of the first few steps, I wouldn't say the software architecture is the first step, but one of the first few steps is to come out with the software architecture. You come out with a software architecture for your application that you are building. the application that you're building. Just like for your house, you have an architecture for your house. Okay, it's a diagram. Similarly, for the software, for building the software as well, you have a software architecture. For building the software as well, you have a software architecture. Okay. So what is an architecture? What is an architecture? It is a combination of software, combination of system components, which we also call it as a hardware, and the connections. So it's a combination of software and a combination of system components and a connections towards it. So Kumar, the definition is so vague. You know, looks like the definition may be right, but I'm not able to make any sense out of it. Okay, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. At this point of time, maybe you cannot, but I'll spend one good solid day on that tomorrow and day after tomorrow. And by the end of it, you'll definitely make sense out of this definition. 100%. Okay, 100%, there is no other way. But at this point of time, it is vague, but I still want you to read this out. Okay, it's a combination of software, combination of system components, or we can say hardware, and the connections. That is what is the architecture. That is what is the software architecture. This is what is called the software architecture. Okay, the importance of architecture, since there is a slide, we will go through that. Okay, design smaller and more manageable pieces of the application, understanding dependencies between the components. Okay, and it will enable the interaction between different stakeholders or the parties who intended to develop the application. Okay, and enables the interaction between system components and the systems. Okay, I'll not be able to explain this at this point of time, but if you have understood, it's well and good. Okay, but I'll revisit this slide after completing this chapter called software architecture. At that point of time, you will definitely understand every single word which is been mentioned in this slide. Okay, now we'll wrap up, guys. We'll wrap up in probably 10 minutes time. I know you have to go to the offices or you have allocated certain time to me, but please understand that, you know, there is always a 5-10 minutes here and there. So you should be prepared to, you know, prepare for that extra 15 minutes. And once the tool demonstration starts, the class will be for 2 hours. Okay, close to 2 hours. So you have to accommodate that time for me, guys. Okay, I want to explain as much as I can, and I wanted to give as much knowledge I have to you. So only that is possible if you spare some time to me. Okay, but for the theory part, I know, you know, 1.5 hours is very long, and you know, you should have a lot of patience to sit and learn. Okay, so but you know, I'll restrict it to 1.5 hours for that. But once the tool demonstration starts, it's very, very interesting. So I'll expect for 2 hours. Okay, expect you to stay for 2 hours. Okay, so now the last topic for the day. As performance tester, why it is necessary for me to understand the software architecture. So I have registered for a class called Performance Testing Using LoadRunner. So why is this guy teaching this stuff called architecture? Why I should learn this architecture? Or some people might be thinking, I've been doing manual testing from last 4-5 years. As a manual tester, I never even worried about the architecture. So why is this guy talking about the architecture here? So for all those people, so I have so these are slides for them. Okay. Now our Mark, okay, he got a new job, let's assume. Okay. So he went to the restaurant, or you know, during the lunchtime he went to the restaurant. Okay, a burger place. Okay, maybe a McDonald's or blah blah blah, whatever it is. Okay. So he has ordered a burger. Okay, he has ordered a burger. Okay, this guy has ordered a burger. Okay, so this is the lady server. Okay, she said, okay, sir. Now she went into the kitchen to get the burger done. But look at the problem. She bought the burger, no issues. Okay, so Mark, you know, started eating the burger. All is fine, not an issue. But there is a problem here. Okay, what is the problem? It took 45 minutes for Mark to receive the burger. That is the problem. Okay, after he has ordered it, it took 45 minutes for this lady to bring the burger, and obviously Mark is not happy with the time taken by the restaurant staff. Mark is definitely not happy with the time taken by the restaurant staff. Okay. Now, it took 45 minutes for Mark to receive the burger. Okay. So Mark is obviously not happy with the restaurant staff. Okay. Restaurant owner. Now here is the thing. You see, watch carefully. So restaurant owner, being Mark's friend, asked Mark for the suggestion to decrease the serving time. Okay. So now the restaurant owner is happened to be Mark's friend. Okay. He's happened to be Mark's friend. Okay. Now he has asked Mark's suggestion. So Mark, can you please help me out? You know, it's taking a lot of time for serving these burgers. 45 minutes is too late. I do understand that. And because of this, not many customers are coming to my place. Please help me out. I'm not able to figure out what it is. Okay. So if you are Mark, I'm asking these questions, guys. I want everybody to participate and answer. Okay. If you were Mark, what would you suggest? Okay. What would you suggest to Mark? Okay, what would you suggest to Mark if you were a Mark? Okay, can you please come out with some questions? If the restaurant owner has come to you and asking me, oh, I'm not understanding what needs to be done, can you please help me out to decrease the serving time? So what would you suggest to the Mark? Okay, if it is too difficult to type, you can unmute and you can speak as well. Okay, okay, so you need to fix it. Okay, you need to fix that issue. Okay, so what is the first thing you will talk to Mark, or what would you suggest? Okay, so Shraddha says, how are you going to prepare this? Okay, so wonderful. Okay, Shraddha is planning to ask him a question. Okay, but others. Okay, Phil is saying get more chefs. Okay, that is the suggestion. The Phil is gonna give to the restaurant owner. Okay, I want to hear from everybody, guys. Okay, I didn't ask you some questions related technical question. This is a simple question which everybody should have their own opinion. Please give me the opinion. If you want to unmute, you can speak as well. Just only 2 answers so far. Okay.
Yeah, so he can ask what is the main number of
others.
Yeah, so he can ask what is the
here.
Am I audible?
Okay, let's see the other people are responding. Thank you. I would want to know their system of operation. Wonderful, Millie. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay. Shraddha says the same thing as well. Beautiful. Okay. Collect the information about the restaurant. Great. Okay. Enter into and check how kitchen, where inventory, storage and all that. Everybody is giving the right answer, guys. By the way, so it's one of the company that I used to work for is called Infosys. So one of a very, very senior manager used to ask this as an interview question. Okay, so I thought I'll put that over here in the slides. So whoever answers this question correctly, they are into Infosys, and because this is what he was thinking, like, you know, what is your approach and all that. Okay, so it's a very important question. It looks silly and simple, but it's a very important question. The thing is, for a Mark to suggest the restaurant owner what is the problem, he needs to first know the problem. How can he know the problem? He needs to get into the kitchen, as most of you have said. Watch carefully what is happening in the kitchen. Okay, during the peak hour. Okay, what is happening in the kitchen. Okay, and once he has observed and watched and finally done something called analysis. Okay, done something called analysis. Okay, once he has done all of that, okay, then he can go and talk to the restaurant owner and say, this is the problem, this is how you have to fix it. Because what Mark has done, he went to the kitchen, and while the burgers are being ordered, okay, while the food is being ordered, he will watch carefully what is the problem. He will analyze them. He will understand it and finally analyze it, and finally he will come out with a suggestion. Okay, the problem could be many things, guys. As Phil said, it could be lack of personnel, or lack of skilled people, or lack of chefs, in other words. Okay, lack of groceries, lack of utensils. Okay, they don't have properly, like, you know, burners or whatever it is, whatever ovens. They don't have good ovens or the fast ovens, or they don't have lot of ovens, or they don't have proper utensils, or they don't have there could be a lot of people, or the coordination with the people might be bad. Okay, the coordination could, or the process or the coordination could be wrong. So there could be 100 reasons why, you know, there is this problem. Okay, lack of people, lack of what do you say? Logistics is what people call it, because it could be ovens, it could be utensils, it could be anything. Lack of groceries, lack of communication, coordination with the people. There could be 100 reasons. But for Mark to suggest, he has to first get into the kitchen, watch carefully, and understand it, do the analysis, and finally come out with the suggestion. So, okay, so as I've said, lack of infrastructure, lack of resources, lack of processes, or it could be something else. So for Mark to suggest, you know, he has to understand this. Now, as a performance tester, if you have to find out there is an issue, okay, if you have to find the issue, where is the issue? If you have to find where is the issue, you have to get into the software architecture, and the issues are there in the software architecture. By the way, the issues that arises because of which the application is slow. What are these issues called, guys? What are these issues called? Can anybody tell me? What are these issues called? The issues because of which the software is slow. What is these issues called? Bottlenecks. Wonderful. Bottlenecks. So, for a performance tester, to identify the bottlenecks, you have to understand the architecture. There is no other way. Okay, these bottlenecks are on the architecture. Okay, are inside this architecture. I don't know if I can call it as inside this architecture, but for now, let's go ahead and do it, because we don't understand the architecture at this point of time. But for us to identify the architecture, you know, we need to get into the architecture, and we can identify the bottlenecks. Here, for Mark to understand what is the issue, he needs to get into the kitchen, and then he can understand the issue. There could be hundreds of issues, but to pinpoint this is the issue, he needs to get into the architecture and understand and analyze it, and finally he can tell you what is the problem. Similarly, for a performance tester to identify the bottleneck, if there is one, he needs to get into the architecture, he needs to understand the architecture, he needs to analyze while the load test is going on, and then he can come out with and he can pinpoint that this is the problem on this matter. Okay, so this is the reason why you need to understand the architecture, guys. And the next slides are, you know, say the same. Okay, so here, you know, the burger is taking a lot of time. But if you take this analogy to the application, let's say you have initiated the login process on the Gmail, okay? It took 1 minute to complete. So you enter the username, you enter the password. Once you click on the sign in button, it is taking how many minutes? 1 minute to show the next page, which is your compose mail page or the home page. 1 minute is a lot of time. 1 minute is 60 seconds. So, which is a lot of time in our performance testing time. 60 seconds is way slow. Usually, industry standards is 2 seconds. Okay, 60 seconds is almost 20 times more. Okay, so for logging in, it is taking 60 seconds. It is way more. In the earlier example, the burger has taken 45 minutes. That is slow as well. Here, it is taking 1 minute. This is also slow. Okay. So this is slow, and obviously there is an issue in the application. Okay, so these issues, as I've told you, okay, identify the bottleneck. We need to get into the application. In other words, we need to understand the software architecture of the application, just like Mark went into the kitchen to understand the issues. Okay, so this is the reason why. We need to understand the software architecture as a performance tester. If you don't understand the architecture of your application and starting the performance testing, you are not doing it the right way. Because after the performance testing is done, if the performance is good, there are no issues, nobody is going to talk to you. I mean, everybody is happy. But if there are issues, or if the application is slow, which means that there are bottlenecks. If there are bottlenecks, then the only way you can pinpoint the bottleneck is if you understand the application. Otherwise, there is no problem. Okay, so you see, let's continue. Just give me 5 more minutes and we're almost done. Okay, now Mark said that, okay, you took really long time. I didn't expect this because I have to go back to the work. and 45%. So what did this lady do? This is the peak hour, and usually in our restaurant during the peak hour, this is the normal time which takes. Okay. Now there is a term called peak hour. There is a term called peak hour. So what is this? What is this? Okay. So what is the peak hour, guys? Time in which you have the maximum business customers. Okay, maximum business or the customers is the peak hour for this enterprise. Okay, so similarly, and by the way, looks like any restaurant in US, 12 to 1 could be the peak hour. Okay, in US, if you are in India, 1 to 2 is the peak hour. In US, the life starts at 8 o'clock. So typically, okay. So is the background noise too heavy, guys? There's a lot of background noise. Oh, is it? Oh my God. Okay, is the background noise for a very long time or it's just started? So now it's good. Now it's good. Okay, wonderful, guys. I think there is a loose connection somewhere. Like I tweak around and it's working. Okay, wonderful, guys. So now in US usually most of the restaurants, okay, they have this peak hour of 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. That's when you have the maximum number of customers or maximum business that is happening during that time. Okay, so restaurant have a peak hour as well. So don't you think the applications have a peak hour as well? What do you say, guys? Applications have the peak hour as well? Guys, I'm asking you a question. Applications have a peak hour as well? Yes, applications do have a peak hour as well. Maybe Amazon, if you're going Amazon, maybe on the weekends could be the peak hour. I don't know exactly when it is, but it could be the peak hour. Okay, so Gmail, maybe in the morning, probably, once most of the people get into the job, they might be checking the emails, or somebody who is got out of the job and around 6 o'clock when they reach home, they start looking into the mails. So probably 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. could be the peak hour for Gmail application. And Facebook, maybe weekends could be the peak hour. But for every application, there is a peak hour, guys. For every application, there is a peak hour. Just like this restaurant which has a peak hour, applications have the peak hour as well. Okay. Again, who is the right person to tell you what is the peak hour? Our client. Okay. We are here to just do the performance testing. Whatever he tells us, we have to do the performance testing for that. So for Mark, okay, for you as a performance tester, the client will give you the peak hour for the application. You need not have to guess it, but you just need to understand that there is a peak hour for every application. Okay, there is a peak hour for every software application, and this is a very, very important thing, guys. Typically, performance testing is usually done for peak hour. Okay. Typically, the performance testing is done for the peak hour, or usually the performance testing is done for the peak hour. Okay. So I'm just giving it a guess. For Amazon.com, the peak hour could be 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. every day, because that's when people get off work and they reach home, and probably they might be shopping. Okay. Now, I made this statement, performance testing usually will be done for the peak hour. Okay. Why? Nobody has asked this question. Why do you think the performance testing is done for the peak hour? Why not for any other hour? Any guesses, guys? Any guesses? Wonderful. Yes, wonderful. That's what it is. This is when your application will be experience the maximum load. And as I've told you before, as the load increases, there is every chance that the performance might deteriorate. So you do the performance testing for the peak hour. And now with the peak hour, if the performance is good, now you can confidently go to your client and say that your application is not only good, or the performance of your application is not only good for the peak hour, but it is good for any other hour. Can we say this or not? If you have done the performance testing for the peak hour and the performance is good, now you can go to your client and confidently tell them that your application is not only fast for the peak hour, but it is fast for any other hour. Or in other words, your application is fast enough. This is the simple thing that you can tell. Your application is fast, which means that it is fast in the peak hour or any other hour. Okay, as long as the hardware is same as the product. Okay, yes, Phil, yes, we'll come to that as well. We'll come to that. Okay, but when we talk about once we have completed the architecture, once we are learning about the production environment and performance testing environment, we'll definitely come to that. Okay, yeah, as long as both the environments is same. Yeah, good. But in general, this is what you can tell. Okay, so this is the reason why you need to do the performance testing always for the peak hour. Okay, why? Because if the performance is good for the peak hour, it is good for any other hour. Okay, so any questions I am ready to take at this point of time. And in the chat window, if I have missed any questions, guys, please let me know. Please type it again so that I'll take your questions again. Okay, sorry, I'll take your questions in case